All right, should be live now if you want to pull it up.
Okay. Okay, I got it. I think you're muted. Yeah.
There we go. I think we're good. So thank you for coming on and
Yeah.
hanging out with me tonight. Um, I think this will be an interesting kind of fun subject to at least start with. We'll see how long we talk about it. I definitely, as people come into, I want to get I'd like to hear people's like thoughts and opinions on this, or because I think it's not a it's a subject that is made, I think, for discussion and conversation rather than like any specific person's opinion. So yeah, as people start to come in, but yeah, I'm here with Swami. For those of you who don't know who Swami is, how do you describe yourself? Long-term collector.
Yeah, I guess I was a YouTuber for a while there.
Yeah.
But just collected now for Pokemon for I don't know 2014. So what is that? Like going on 7 years? No, going on 8, right? Anyway, yeah. Uh that's all I am now. Just a collector. Just a lonely old collector.
You've lost your expert status, right?
Yeah. Which is the topic of tonight. What makes a Pokemon expert? Correct. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I thought we would. Yeah, and as people start coming in, I thought it'd be interesting and relevant to talk about, in part because of this whole Logan Paul situation. So talking about sort of why experts are important, why we like to look to experts in the Pokemon card hobby, but also in life much more broadly, in general for all sorts of things in our life. And even in the Pokemon hobby, we look to experts, right, to help us with our taxes, to help us, professionally in all sorts of way with our even Pokemon businesses, or sort of what we do here. And I think that, I guess we can start. And as people start to come in, please share your thoughts and opinions on the subject tonight. But we can start with, are there any Pokemon experts, Swami? Yes or no? No.
Yeah, there's experts. There's experts. I thought I was an expert, and I found out I was wrong through 2020. And I wouldn't say, wrong. I'd say a lot of my opinions are wrong, even though I am an expert, right? I mean, set cards, a lot of promos, but I remember looking at trophies and just like skipping over those, seeing a high price and not even thinking about like absolute scarcity, right? And then I've seen other people that are experts in the sense that they know a lot, but their perspective is skewed, right? Like if they're a box breaker, or if they collect only Watsy vintage, right? And especially if they're selling, if they're making money in any way, I know a lot of experts, quote unquote, that could have their direction kind of just skewed, in either way. But there's some experts definitely. But then it's tough to tell that is it right? Is their opinion right? Does it work for you? Does their opinion work for them? Why do they think that way?
Yeah, I think those are a lot of good questions. Yeah, when I think of like what an expert is, like first my mind goes like, okay, so what is an expert? Like how do we know if someone's an expert or not? And first we need to like have some working definition, of some sort. And I think the reality is that it's a sliding spectrum, right? It's like, at what point is a person an expert versus maybe like a generalist where they have like good knowledge in a lot of things, but no expertise in a specific space or area. And then a person who's sort of like a novice, at something where they really don't. And to me, it centers around knowledge and ability. So it's, do you have sort of in-depth knowledge, in something, or if the expertise is more of an action that you're taking, or some sort of ability, it's not necessarily like an intellectual expertise. Like, can you physically do that thing,
Yeah.
and do that thing well. I think people in the Pokemon space, you can be an expert in editing, an expert, in the YouTuber space, an expert in editing, an expert in maybe entertainment, charisma. Can you be a charismatic expert? Can you be an expert on sealed product, sealed vintage, errors, Japanese vintage, Pikachu promos? Can you be an expert on everything? Or is anyone truly an expert on everything in Pokemon? I would say absolutely not. That's my own personal opinion, that I would say for me, it would meet the threshold of what I would call an expert on all things, all areas, everything in Pokemon, because there's so many different Pokemon cards, and there's so much to know. And I don't even think, I think you can learn about stuff and then like forget it too, because there's so many things.
Definitely.
So it's also, are you like currently an expert right now? Because in order to be an expert, you also have to be up on the latest, right? So there are people who might have been an expert a year ago who kind of fallen out, who aren't as engaged, who I wouldn't say are necessarily like experts right now, specifically on like the current market, but maybe an expert on, is this like Koro Pikachu, like which variation is this glossy, is this unglossy, like all these like tiny little interesting things. So one thing I think it's good to think about is sort of, what and what you said is sort of like, how do you figure out, and maybe I'll ask you this question, Swami, like, how do you figure out if someone is an expert in something or not? And rather than like people are an expert or not an expert, this conversation is definitely it's a spectrum, right? There are people who, maybe meet that threshold for us that we would call them that. But then there are a lot of people who are like super knowledgeable who we may not call experts or something like that. What would you?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm looking at somebody and trying to determine if they're an expert, it's what area of Pokemon am I thinking they're an expert on? And then sometimes what information are they providing me that is valuable? And then why do I believe them? It's kind of like, like Echo-based collectibles, for example, knowing the history, he went to Worlds, he went to Nationals, he was at the specific event. And so things like that, if I'm wondering what was distributed, I think he said he received 10 cases, or the winner received 10 cases of every Wizards of the Coast set at Nationals. Maybe that was Worlds, but he received a case, different things. It's like, okay, well, he was there. I believe that he knows what he's talking about, because I don't think this is just fantasy reality. But it definitely.
To stop you there for just 1 second. I mean, you bring up one thing that's really difficult, right? Part of when someone is an expert, it's because they know things or they have information that you don't have. And so when they tell you it, there's that feeling of like, okay, well, I didn't know that. And you're an expert, or I believe you have, like, in this, instance, like firsthand experience, and for this booster box incidents, right? It could be, well, you've opened up hundreds and hundreds of booster boxes. I'm imagining, I don't really know, and if we talk about, what's happening with this case, with BBCE, it's like, well, I don't know their process or what they do, but I'm trusting that if you do trust it, that he's an authentication expert and that he must know what he's doing but he hasn't proven that or taught me sort of, how that works. So it becomes this difficult thing where if you don't actually explain or teach someone, and so that they, I guess, theoretically are now an expert or have some sort of like understanding about what you were just saying, so they can like see or experience firsthand your knowledge on something. Can you tell, do you think we should trust people, all these types of things?
Well, like with this box, with this case, the Logan deal.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'll say with Logan, I don't think Logan's an expert. I don't think he's claimed that he's an expert. But you can know right away, okay, Logan's just getting in this. I don't doubt that he loves Pokemon, but I know he's not an expert, right?
Yeah.
It was strange that he didn't go to any long-term Pokemon collectors to vet this case. But I will say that if I went to a baseball, was it baseball authenticator?
Baseball, yeah, card exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have felt pretty confident, but it's so tough because I feel like I would have gone to Pokemon quote unquote experts, right? Someone that could tell me what they think looking at this box, right? Do a little bit of digging. And maybe he's just so filthy rich. Baseball authenticator is all you need, right? But
Yeah.
um yeah. Yeah.
Well, it does show a danger to me. So yeah, so I think for myself, like if I had $100 million, or $200 million or whatever, $120 million, and I was entering into a new hobby, when you're very rich, you have to be very careful of the people that you surround yourself with, particularly if you don't have knowledge yourself, because these people have a huge incentive because they're being paid a lot of money by you, right? To be experts, and they have a huge, whether it's a clout incentive or that you're paying them directly a lot of money to do something incentive, whatever it is, there's a lot of incentive to exaggerate their expertise, we could say. Um, uh, and so, I think if I'm someone like Logan, and I would imagine I know he's 25 years old, but the guy has been famous and in these types of things forever. And so I would guess he knows exactly, please. Yeah. I would guess he knows exactly what he's doing. Who the hell knows, right? What he's thinking, but putting him aside for a second, if I had $100 million, $120 million, how I would approach a new market I was really passionate about is I would want to become extremely educated in it before making any purchases. Now, the argument that I hear a lot is that, well, they're very rich people or extremely rich people often don't have the time because they're so busy, right? They're so busy, making their fortune and whatever they're doing, in this case, content creation by Logan Paul, that they pay people that they trust basically to make these decisions for them. And now, not only do I think that that's a little scary to me, and just like speaking on a human level of like what I would be comfortable with, but for me, for me personally, it would take all of the enjoyment out of collecting, or a lot of the enjoyment out of collecting, because to me, the enjoyment of collecting is learning about the things, understanding the things, not hearing some expert or someone telling me that this is the best thing to buy. This is the more important thing to buy. And I've always had this feeling about these people who kind of go around to like every major, hobby and basically buy up like the best things or a lot of the best things.
Well, see, that's it, because you don't see how that's not fun, but I could see how that would be fun. Like if I was just going to roll in and buy first ed Charizard 10, and then roll in and buy Eye of Ophidia, and then roll in and buy, Marvel PMG, and just kind of hop and just be like, hey, I got the best of the best, right? We have a different perspective of collecting than someone that's worth 100 million or 200 million dollars.
I don't think that's fun if you don't. So I'm thinking like for me, owning like a bank's let me think. I know a decent amount about art. I'm trying to think of some sort of category that I know think about. Okay, that I don't really care about very much. I'm gonna choose
Coins. For
yeah,
me, it would be coins. I don't care that much about them.
or like trains or like model trains or something, or like Matchbox for me. So there's like a $250,000 like some sort of, I've heard, like a prototype van or something that they made. Throw this type of thing out there. If an expert tells me um, that this is the thing to buy, it's the most expensive and it's going to do the best, not only am I concerned about the validity or who this expert is and what incentive they have to sell this to me and how many do they own and what's their experience with this. And not only would I want to know all of those things before I would deal with that person, which would require a lot of energy and time and a lot of knowledge I don't have, but I also wouldn't get the enjoyment because I was just told to buy something. Like, I didn't see it as the best. Now, having $100 million and going around and buying anything I wanted sounds like a blast under any circumstance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But having $200 million and then actually doing deep knowledge and buying stuff that is that I think is undervalued, or that I understand the value, or I understand why it's cool. Now, to be fair to Logan is a big Pokemon fan, right? And really likes these cards and really gets excited about it and enjoys them. So it's not like he has no connection or no knowledge or no understanding, at all. So we can get a little into the weeds there, but I think that for me, going back to what I would do if I were Logan Paul, and sort of what's happened here is clearly it seems like he trusted, Jake and Pokeju and some of these other guys, Mealy Pops, and I guess he didn't buy directly from them, but then trusted who was it? Shine, who he bought it from? I forget, the sports guy.
I don't know.
Or some people in his camp, whoever he's listening to, and trusting that this is the best thing to own. It's the most exciting thing to own. If I had his sort of money, I would just buy out every trophy card. Like, I would just mass buy out all the world's promos. They'd all be gone and they'd all be worth much more. There were all sorts of areas of the market that I would target and buy out, that not only do I think it would go up in value much more, but I would enjoy it much more. And this is where I think there's this weird sort of
it goes exactly back to what I was saying. I thought I was an expert, and technically, like if you ask me about set cards or something, sure, I looked at those for 6 years going into 2020. But then to really learn about trophies and absolute scarcity and all that, completely different side of the market that I never paid attention to over a period of 6 years, right? And I mean, I think if someone like Logan went in there, bought up trophies, because with $3.5 million, you could do some damage, if not just completely wipe out everything that's available. I think that would be interesting. But I mean, it takes, who is he talking to and who's telling him about trophies, which will be very interesting, because if he ends up talking to Pratt and he walks out with 20 different uni Magikarps, then we're sitting back and going, all over again, right? So yeah.
Well, okay, so for me, it goes back to experts should know and present the facts, or have access to as many facts as possible. And an expert should be able to know everything about all of these cards, be able to explain all of these cards, why they think this card or that card is going to do this or that, why all of that matters. Those are all facts. Then there's a lot of subjective sort of opinions on how good the art is, what the demand is going to look like, why someone likes something, why someone doesn't like something. That all, I would say, experts are going to have more informed opinions, but different experts are going to like disagree and have like reasonable opinions based on facts that they both know on both sides of all these types of things. But I think that there's a lot and has been a lot this year, and also moving it away. We can move it away too from the Logan Paul situation. I do want to get to chat and read some of the comments that people are saying, but there's clearly an issue of, in my opinion, of a lack of transparency that I think makes me either a lack of actual ability, knowledge, or a lack of transparency in certain places that makes me question people's expertise and or question their honesty around, like, either they are, acting like or trying to look like they know more than they know. And part of that to me can be like repeating what other people say, repeating, kind of not getting your own firsthand knowledge, firsthand experience, and all these things, looking up the data yourself, but repeating things like false things that I hear other people repeat can be a good example. You are literally like copying people's videos. For example, like Rattle's done a ton of effort, whether he's ends up being right or wrong. And, I don't really know. Again, I'm definitely not an expert on this case or what is happening. And then you have a lot of like takes like that are like experty takes on the subject, but they're kind of just like using Rattle's things without actually having the 2-hour, 3-hour conversations Rattle was having. And it almost like if you're getting your news, your experience from there, you're not necessarily getting it from someone who actually knows what's on the ground or what's really happening. And then there are things that I don't think, Rattle does not know BBCE's authentication process. I highly doubt. I don't think anyone does. So for anyone to be like, this is legit, this isn't legit, to me, there's also a level of like, what did they actually do? And maybe they did enough that it ends up being legit and we were wrong to doubt them the entire way, even with all the sketchy stuff around it. You know what I mean? So I think that now, again, Rattle's not claiming to be an expert. But I do think we have people who claim to be experts overtly and say they're experts and or act or talk like they're 100% certain or this is definite or this is not definite. Say things that are not, objective. Say subjective opinions or different things as if they are objective facts in order to win arguments or gain counter clout or appear kind of more confident than they actually are in something. I don't know. What do you think of all that?
Well, I keep thinking like, well, instead of Logan, you got a super chat, by the way, from Black Rose. She says, just popping in, have a great stream.
Thanks, Black Rose.
But yeah, so I kept thinking like, okay, yeah, it's Logan, the $100 million man, $3.5 million case, but experts, it matters on like a bigger level in the sense that it matters to everyday collectors. And I think why I care about who I'm listening to and what they're saying is because I'm myself a collector, but I know there was a bunch of new people in last year that were brand new and didn't know very much. And so I think knowing who the experts are is a big deal for the collector that wants to get the most bang for their buck. I mean, if you can spend wisely, right? Not go out and buy a $350 Evolution Surfing Pikachu because you can get that thing for $2 raw. Maybe grade it yourself, get 10 of them and grade 10, in a couple of years for $10 a pop. Whatever you got to do to get a 10. If you want that card in a 10, you can get it. Just be patient, and $350 could go a lot further in other places of the hobby right now. I think that's what matters most. And so like if you're a collector, I think who you're listening to matters just in the sense that you're not throwing money around and you're being tactical with it, right? And if you can do that, then I think that's why it matters. I think that's why it matters if the person knows what they're talking about. One or two has skin in the game. And so, yeah. And different people have different areas of the hobby that they're experts on. So how do you want to collect? And think about that, like when you're listening to somebody. It's very tough I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus tonight, but it is kind of tough to describe. A lot of them are gone. We lost like 15 PokeTubers, I think, over the last 4 or 5 months. Like 15 PokeTubers are just, they're gone, including myself. And not all of them were, a lot of them were just like me. They're just like, yeah, life's kind of getting back to normal. But a lot of them were like, they didn't know what they were talking about, right? But as soon as modern went back to old school pricing, pretty much they were done, which I thought was kind of funny. But just well,
yeah, I think
look at the flex guides. I don't think I've ever heard the flex guides claim any sort of superior knowledge. Like, I think though that he always says, I'm learning, I'm getting better, this is what I'm doing, I'm trying it out. He says those kind of phrases. And then I think I heard he just graded a PSA 10 Gold Star Trico and Torchic. It's like he's got those at PSA 10 now, and it's like that's just from grinding. Guys like that, great. I think if you could do it, he's crushing it. Both those guys are crushing it.
Yeah, I think like, if we take like base set, I think is a good example to talk about this. Okay. Base set first edition. And we think about all the varying level of expertise you could have on first edition base and sealed first edition, versus base set and shadowless. You can have like, I remember when I first got back in the hobby, I had to look up the difference between shadowless and unlimited and first edition. That was about 6 years ago or so now. And I remembered they were things from when I was a kid, but I didn't remember just shadowless. First edition was fairly obvious, but just kind of, that was the first thing. Right. And it's part of why a video online entitled shadowless versus,
first edition versus unlimited
is a phenomenally valuable YouTube video.
Yeah.
But it's not, but an expert in Pokemon doesn't need to like necessarily make that video, nor now an expert could have made that video. But so I think so, but it's still very valuable. So there's a lot of very valuable information that is not necessarily like expert level information. Okay. Now, sometimes expert level information can be not very valuable because it can be like from a market standpoint, particularly, but it can be more valuable from maybe like an interest standpoint for people who are super interested in stuff.
Yeah.
But knowing like very niche specific variations, for error collectors, different errors, it's like, there is a market for that and you could probably make some money in that market, but there's much less liquidity and knowledge and interest and all sorts of things in that market, than from a money-making standpoint than just understanding like first edition base and and so now you can know a lot about the history of something in terms of you can know a lot about the artist, right? You can know a lot about, how that artist developed over time. You can know the date or when you could maybe have some really interesting information about like when that artist started with the Pokemon company, when they started designing that card. You can know all of this really interesting outside information. You could also be an expert.
Know the money.
Yeah, you could also be an expert or know the entire price history, the population report history, all these types of things.
Yeah.
And so I think that understanding sort of what you don't know, you know, what you do know, and then how you can access that information to grow your knowledge so that you have more of that expertise over time in wherever you want to be an expert in. There are people in the Pokemon hobby who have all of that information, or a lot of that information, and that you can end up getting it. You can also get a lot of that stuff, yourself in a sense from reading articles and scouring, videos and all sorts of things too. You don't even actively need to have a discussion with people. So a lot of that stuff is out there for each person out here to become an expert or to become more of an expert, on all that stuff. But again, I think a lot of it comes down to passion, right? And the passion for knowledge, right? It's like, do you have the passion for wanting to really know all of this stuff, or do you just want to listen to someone tell you what to do and give you, now I think there are two there I tend to see two different things. Like I tend to see people who ask me like the data, they want the history, the stuff that they can't access because they weren't in the hobby, because I have the memories of the population reports before, or how quickly they were graded, or the price data there, and so they ask me those types of questions. Then I have people who ask me just like, what should I buy? Right. Just tell me. Don't tell me any information or even why. I just want to know I have $1,000. I want to put it into something, this type of thing. Now, I will say, the Logan situation, it's a little bit like, I have a lot of money. What's the best thing? What should I just throw it in? It gets a little bit into to that sort of high level stuff. It's a little bit, what's the right word? There is a little bit of a like, this is kind of what happens when you don't. It's like sort of a good lesson for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, this is what happens when you are not super engaged in something. You don't talk to people who've been here a really long time. But yeah,
I can't believe just after the dumb money box being fake, I'm a little surprised that there wasn't a little bit more effort going into this thing. Just on the tailwind of all that, that was kind of a big deal. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, history experts, gosh, I think like I don't have to say any names, but there's people that know a lot that never left, that have been here through 20 some odd years, and then they have zero clue on the financial side. They've never sold a card in their life, right?
yeah,
And then there's people that haven't been doing this very long, but have their own sort of expertise. Like, I was talking to somebody who thought it was like, not Chilling Rain, Evolving Skies was worth, it'd be in a healthy market, it would be good price at like 144. And he's a box breaker, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I had no idea box breaking was that lucrative, because I'm sitting there going like, I'm not paying more than $95 for a Evolving Skies booster box. But like, but if you know that, oh, this person's a box breaker, they're fine with getting it at 144, like, that's interesting, because then okay, well, then he's making money maybe 160, 180, whatever it is. And it's like, always try to realize where people are coming from with their own perspectives. And
yeah,
but I think for collectors, it's kind of important, especially when you're talking about buying slabs. I mean, not all the slabs you want are super cheap. And when you're on a budget, you don't have many stimmies coming in, and you got to save up a month or two for something. It kind of is important to make sure, like, is this at a good price right now? Make your money go as far as you can.
yeah. And then there are people who are experts on how to sell, or more experts on how to sell, how to run a business, and then within that, there are experts who are more experts in how to sell singles or how to sell modern or sort of lower end. There are people who are more experts in
Yeah,
the
like
people are experts at the top.
I
There's
just asked a Weiss expert. Like, I don't know if you see all those cards on the table,
yeah,
but they're like, "Oh yeah, dude." I opened up a case and he's like, "Yeah, sell a playset." And so I'm selling, I don't know, like probably $700 of the $950 case in these play sets. And so I'm like setting them all out, and I sold one. I'm working on selling a second one, but it's like, yeah, so I'm gonna get like more than 2/3 of the box back on just the play set, and I'll keep all the hits. And yeah, who can, yeah, exactly. I'm sorry for interrupting, but it was to your point. I had no idea. Like, I would have thrown all that stuff out. The bulk of Weiss is pretty intense, but I'll definitely sell a play set for 3 hundo.
yeah. I mean, there's so much to know on the market side. There's a lot to know on the history side. You can go super deep there. And I think that, so I do think that, all right, so we've sort of answered, like, there's clearly a lot of experts. There's a lot of people with a lot of information in all sorts of areas in the Pokemon hobby. Okay. So let me grab a couple of comments and questions. Let's see how we're doing
All
here
right.
with stuff, because I'm sure we've got some
There's
interesting
been
things.
some good ones. No
All right.
moonshine for me.
So Mason starts by saying, just part of being an expert is continually growing your knowledge base. Yeah, and both in terms of becoming more of an expert in something, but I would say also just retaining, because if you don't stay super engaged in a lot of things, you actually decrease in your expertise. It's part of why, like, as a therapist, I'm doing continuing education credits. I'm constantly reading articles. I'm constantly thinking, about reading the latest studies, and also just exploring and thinking about my sessions and all sorts of things in order to kind of keep myself, you know,
Someone's asking me to show some cards, but even like if you were a gold star expert and someone, yesterday came out and they showed a pile that they stole from the factory years ago,
yeah,
like you would not be an expert if you didn't know that vital piece of information that was released. Like, if it hadn't been released all those years ago and was released yesterday, and you didn't know that, it's kind of a big deal.
yeah. And so generally when we think of expertise, we think of knowledge, we think of ability. We also think of things like efficiency and speed. So an expert can often do something a lot quicker than other people, which is part of why people pay for experts in their life. Like, there's a lot of things that you and I could do. Like, I've done my taxes every year before this past year myself. And let me tell you, when I gave it to a tax expert, it was much quicker and, and simpler and easier, and they knew what they were doing a lot more. When I did it myself, I could do it, right, when I put in the effort, but it took me a long time. There was a lot of stress involved, right? So there are a lot of examples of where going to an expert or someone who has great expertise can really increase the speed. So both the speed at which you can learn something, or if you're just giving them to do it, the speed in which they can then do it for you, so you can do other things. Your average person, I think an expert is a person with a lot of knowledge and time in what they do, but is a person who can acknowledge mistakes. So I think that a trustworthy expert is someone who can acknowledge mistakes. I think someone can be an expert but also have a issue with acknowledging mistakes for 100%. So but I do like the sentiment that I think an expert that you should trust over time is someone who does acknowledge their mistakes and or just admits, as we all should, is that what we do and don't know. And part of expertise is actually understanding your capacity in something, or the capacity that anyone could get to, right? So when we have lots of people making guarantees, one thing that we talk a lot about, right, is, the idea of guarantees and investing and sort of what that looks like, rather than thinking about things on a percentage basis and risk assessment, thinking about it as, that way, rather than thinking about it as like, this will definitely happen, or this will, or, won't happen. When you get into sort of that type of language, even if it's from an expert, and because it can be from an expert, but they probably are selling you something, or they have some sort of ulterior motive or incentive, particularly if it's from an expert. If it's not from an expert, then it's more of a naive, thing, which people were allowed. I mean, people are allowed to say things and have opinions on things they know nothing about.
Well, I think that's a good one. Like, take reserved investments, or who's this guy that his man, Henry Rinker?
Rinker, yeah.
Rinker. So Rinker, he would also be an expert, right? But then he wouldn't know anything about MetaZoo or Pokemon or Magic the Gathering. And I don't think reserved investments, Sean knows all that much about any of these either.
Nope.
It's just their expertise kind of coming in. And so you're like, okay, well, can these become established in ways that the trains can't, or that the cowboy stuff of the 40s and 50s, the toys of the 40s and 50s can't? It's like, okay, well, do they have their own bias and their own expertise?
Yeah. And I mean, I think the biggest thing that's missing from a lot of their analysis is social media and technology. And I think that when you grew up in the world of collectibles before types of communities being able to be built like this, I think you underestimate the scope that collecting can be much bigger now than it ever was in the past, because of all of these, because of social media. So I have my own
IPs too.
But I would absolutely say they are experts, or seem to be experts, again, on the general the history, right, of collectability and collecting and these types of things, versus being experts in any specific Pokemon, and they're probably both experts in lots of different collectibles. They haven't demonstrated a lot of that. I haven't read a lot of what is it, Henry Rinker. So I don't know, but I haven't read a lot of Sean's stuff. I know he talks a lot about coins and but just because a person doesn't talk a lot about something doesn't mean that they're not an expert in it. They could be a huge expert in it and they just don't talk a lot about it. Although I do know for a fact that Sean is not a Pokemon expert, and just from him hearing him talk about Pokemon for 5 to 10 minutes, any sort of specifics, he probably doesn't even know the difference between first edition and shadowless, and how to tell the difference and what the differences would be on the card. So we're talking about, like,
surprise me,
very entry, level.
Well,
although he's talking about it from an overall sort of collectible fads, irrational exuberance, all the stuff that we talked about on this channel all year too. That's why we agreed on a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, and Rinker looked like an expert. So when he was in the Beanie Baby bubble and he's saying he was the Beanie Meanie, so in real time he was the person everyone should have been listening to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it really makes me wonder how Pokemon would be different. And I really do think Pokemon's different, because I don't see, like, what do they talk about? Toy trains. I think there was like this cowboy stuff that was big for a while, Western type toys that went away. And it's like, okay, well, Pokemon's been crushing since 99 and it's still crushing. It's not getting smaller. It's been getting bigger. And it is a different world. Social media, the internet, these IPs that just will not die. It is all very different. Very different.
Yeah. So let's see what we got here. Poke Collectible says, super hard to become an expert in anything. Very few actual experts in any given field. So I think that it definitely goes back to how we define an expert. So, like if I were to call someone a Pokemon expert, like I could do it casually and in a chill way, or I could do it like very super seriously and name nobody a Pokemon expert, or only like one or two people, and that would also have to do with like Pokemon expert in everything and every aspect of this, or or an expert on starting a very specific business, or an expert on this type of sealed product. Because I'd be much more comfortable saying that someone is an expert on something very specific than I would be like an expert on the Pokemon card hobby or the card market completely or anything like that. For me personally, I do think what happens is that generally people become experts when they have a lot of passion for something, when they spend a lot of time doing it, but also when they are doing it as some sort of career. And I think that it's part of why we don't have a lot of like average people are like tax experts or lawyer experts or doctor experts. It's like you have a lot of people who are very smart people who probably have pretty good general knowledge of medical health, general knowledge of taxes, general knowledge of law, but would not be an expert or near an expert in any of those things. And where they're real lawyers, they're real tax experts who are significantly so passionate, have worked their whole lives in these things and know the law so unbelievably well in every single case, and all these types of things, right? But those people partially got there because they got paid to do that, because they were engaged in that field in a long time. And it is very difficult to become an expert in a lot of things. I think generally you see a lot of people who are generalists in a number of things, and they may be an expert in sort of like one or two things in their life if they choose to be.
Yeah, I think like the difference between someone think of like a Pokemon overflow, right? He hears about Logan's case and he's like, I'm going to look into this. And it probably would take him like a while to figure something out, as opposed to, and it may not, I just was kind of making an overflow joke. That guy cracks me up. But the Rattle, right? He knows who to go talk to. And when he has a question, it probably didn't take him as long as somebody that would be new. For instance, like let's say someone's new and they're a little fishy about the case, they get a little feeling, it would take them a long time. Rattle can sit there and go, no, we need to look into this. He knows where to go, who to ask, and there's people that can help. It's such a big hobby. And there's like, yeah, expert, probably not, but for the whole hobby. But for sections of it, yeah, there's some experts out there.
So Mason says, can you be an expert in sealed Pokemon cases when you mainly deal in sports card sealed product is the next question. So the honest truth is probably you could. But I have no idea because we don't know BBCE's like authentication process. But realistically, is it possible that someone a year ago didn't even know what first edition base is, which is true. The BBC guy didn't really even know what it was or what it meant to the Pokemon. We just kind of had like a real general knowledge about it. Okay. To going to being the number one authentication expert on that box or in the world. It's possible in the sense that, first of all, he might have done so much of it with PSA this year. He might have thrown himself into it. There may not be that much to learn. And he might have 20 years of experience doing it with wax packs, and which he does, and all these other sports things, to the point where he is actually able to very quickly and effectively kind of move it to any sort of card hobby, because there are similarities across all of these things. Now, I'm highly suspect of that. Rattle obviously was highly suspect of that. That is a red flag. It's a normal human reaction to be like, you didn't even know it existed, and now you're the foremost expert a year ago. But it doesn't disqualify for me. But again, it's a question mark, and because he hasn't ever talked about, from my understanding, his authentication process. I went to his website. I looked around in interviews to see, I did some research, not a huge amount, but I spent maybe 3 hours or so, trying to find him just talking about his process, because the part of this that I wanted to learn was, how does this guy do what he does? And that's the part, like, I care a lot less about like the multiple backstories of the case and all the weird sort of shady clout chasing and this or that may or may not be going on. I care more about like, can we authenticate these things? And from my understanding, all the people who I would deem as probably the most expert on something like this cannot give a straight answer at all. So the people who I feel like have held them, who have seen the most cases, who have, now are there Wizards of the Coast people behind the scenes? Are there people who have no YouTube account and no social media presence who are experts on this and who could tell us? Probably, right? But they're not coming out and saying it. It's also why all of these social media people and all of these big people, they may like know a lot less than some quiet people behind the scenes. So you also have to be careful that just because a guy like me and Swami and just big math out here talking, it doesn't mean that we that we have real knowledge.
Like, I have zero knowledge on first edition base set booster box cases.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to say.
Yeah. I mean, my knowledge, I'm going to put that in real, comes from doing a lot of research and listening to videos and reading articles, but it does not come from firsthand experience working at the company, talking to employees, being around at that time, seeing how they were brought out, all these types of things, right? So it's all secondhand. So another good topic to talk about is secondhand expertise, or, these types of where you're getting information, secondhand knowledge, so I'm part of why I the whole time had zero opinion on the case one way or another is because it'd be ridiculous from me. I mean, if people like, TCA and Gary and again, probably a lot more quiet people who would be even quite a bit more knowledgeable than them aren't coming out and saying anything, it would be absurd for someone like me who has no experience at all, other than, again, being just very engaged and hearing what they've been saying for years and years and years and years. So.
See what these comments are at.
But I will say we have to be careful, to go back to Mason's question, we have to be careful about assuming that someone isn't an expert just because they haven't demonstrated their expertise to us. But I do think it's important to have, it's like, well, you're calling yourself an expert. What have you done? What do you own? Where does that come from? I think is a reasonable thing. John says you can identify someone as a non-expert as someone who doesn't know what they don't know by seeing their incredibly strong opinion with little to no nuance. Yeah. I would generally either not an expert or someone who it's more has an ego issue, because there are some experts who I would say have amazing knowledge who might also have a huge ego, who can't question themselves or acknowledge things they don't know, or because they're more from a personality standpoint incapable of admitting that they don't know things. But that doesn't make them not an expert. And I do think that's important because I have worked with for people who I would describe that as. So, and I've had brilliant professors and other sorts of things who I would say never admitted that they were wrong and seemed a bit arrogant, but I would also call them experts at what they did. And I learned a lot. So I think that can be valuable. You can learn a lot from, you shouldn't push people away just because they have those types of personalities. It doesn't mean that they don't know things too. And jump in wherever, Swami, if you want to.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I hear you typing answer.
Dabs. Yeah.
Yeah. Please do. So I can go back to some questions. There are some other questions that are sort of like slightly off the topic, but I want to really touch on this for a while.
All I read so far was I take objection to Jake's stance, which is whatever, let's disagree, but it just seems silly to me that there are a lot of people with experience with something that doesn't require that person to be an expert. This is Mason. So Mason, he said one of the things Mason said earlier, that he said, why didn't Logan go to you, Jake? But he also says right here,
because I'm not an expert on authentication. and
Um,
and probably more to the point, I'm not famous enough. Although that's whatever.
but he says, let's disagree, but it just seems silly to me that there are a lot of people with experience with something that doesn't require that person to be an expert. So people with experience, I know that was a joke, Mason, but people with experience, they don't, yeah, I don't think people with experience have to be an expert either. I would just question, for yourself, why are you watching YouTube videos? Are you watching for entertainment? Are you watching to try to know what the next waifu boom is so you can capitalize on it? Do you want to know what the next waifu boom is so you can collect before it blows up? Uh, why are you watching? And then try to find those experts that will help you do that. And if you're just trying to chill, have a good time, and collect at a, make your money go as far as possible, then that's what it is. That's usually what I like to watch. But yeah, why are you watching? Like, why are you looking for an expert? Because I think we all look for experts in anything
Yeah.
that we spend our time on.
Yeah, and there's 100% like no wrong, like obviously there's been a lot of gatekeeping in the hobby. I think we're largely through that at this point, and I think it's good. Most areas it's sort of accepted as like, hey, people would like enjoy the hobby, these types of things. I think the dangerous parts is two things, right? It's someone pretending or overstating what they know or their expertise in something, um, overtly calling themselves an expert overtly when they're not. And then the third would be, which I think is the most, is that there's a lot of uneducated people who I think they think that the people with the biggest platforms or the most attention are experts necessarily, and experts on the subject matter, experts in knowledge. But I think that tends to be a more youthful thing, and is probably not as much of an issue with people who are actually like buying these items. And people who are actually like really buying these items and are engaged in these items are more, I think, watching TCA Gaming and SM Pratt, and rather than channels or videos that are talking about like, here are the same 5 modern booster boxes that you should buy as last week.
Yeah. And then those people are watching those videos.
Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah.
Because it feels nice because you just bought those booster boxes to hear them, to watch 10 videos in a row telling you, good buys. I will say those videos. So I've watched maybe 10 to 15. I watch about 10 to 15 modern videos every week. So I've watched thousands of these modern videos from all different creators. Okay. And they always say the price is higher than it actually is. Every single one of them pick the higher prices, and I always buy it for like 10, 15, $20 under what they're saying it's going for right now. And so that's an example of where like I literally think a lot of them are just going to other videos and repeating the prices other people say rather than doing a very quick search on last sold. Like I think a lot is like literally that. I don't know what other explanation that will just everyone would be saying the wrong numbers over and over and over again. And surprise, surprise, it's always higher.
Than if you have like 10 PokeTubers that are all saying the same thing, you will know who will be on the ship with you when it goes down. All right. No, I'll give him a break. Give him a break. All right.
No gatekeeping. Sorry. Oops. No, I think that for me, it's like, I actually like, so I think that these channels, I think when you're not an expert, but you're really passionate, you want to make videos, like maybe you really want to be a YouTuber, or you really want to be just part of the conversation, and you really like all that stuff, and you're good at editing and these types of things. I would encourage you to either do the research so that the numbers and the things you're saying are actually accurate. And then I would literally have zero issue with you coming out and stating your opinions if they were filled with accurate information and numbers, one. And then two, or just like figure out content that doesn't require that sort of thing,
I got a question. So does a expert in other areas of life help people make better decisions in the collectibles hobby? So if you're a financial advisor in the past life, if you are a psychologist, a therapist, a doctor,
I think I have generalist knowledge as an investor, which I think helped. And my dad, I would call an expert who's been a financial advisor for 30 years. And I think being around him and talking with him so much, I would not call myself an expert in any of that. But I think I'm a generalist, somewhere in that category. Like I have, decent knowledge in a number of places that does not go super deep. So if I'm asked too many questions and follow-up questions too deeply down any road, I'm gonna run out of answers. Whereas if you talk to a financial advisor, they'd continue to have answers. That's when that's one good sign that you're not really have a real depth of knowledge on something. But that's helpful. And bringing that was helpful. My psychology stuff, which I'm a professional at that, I would say, I'm an expert. Again, it depends on how we define expert. I'm certainly not some sort of world, when I say expert, guys, expert is a comp. For me, there are millions and millions and millions of experts in lots of things, particularly like a huge profession like that. And hopefully your therapist out there is an expert in doing therapy, because that's what their job is, So from that perspective,
Chief Keeney says, yes, 100%. That tempers how you go about your purchases and how you spend. If you are, I think he's talking about this topic. Like if you are, a, financial advisor, let's say, about that one. Well, okay. I don't know. I think there's people that can understand things. I think you still need to know a lot about this hobby. Print runs, scarcity. Demand is easy to gauge, in my opinion. I feel like that's pretty easy. Charizard. But what are the print runs of that Charizard? Or is it still in print? Is it still printable? Could they literally come out with this product and print the thing and stick it on a Target shelf tomorrow? Things like that. I think you can't just be a financial advisor and stroll in and do any better than someone that is looking into the right questions and asking the right questions. So
yeah, I mean, so part of, generally speaking, in things of part of why it can be hard is when you're not an expert in something. Often people don't realize they're not an expert in something because they don't realize that there's more to know, or that there are more things that they could be doing, or that there are people who have more expertise in that because there are things that they've figured out or have done that you haven't done. So I think part of what's tough, and we can go back to our question, here before going back into the chat with like the question and the title of are there any Pokemon card experts, is it's tough in Pokemon because there is a lot of limitations. Like there's a lot of stuff that I don't think anyone knows. There's a lot like about print runs, distribution stuff, and the people who do know are not telling anyone else. So there could be like those people would be more experts than I or anyone else who doesn't have that information would be immediately, at least in that sort of way. It would be one thing. are Swami and I experts in the Pokemon card hobby? I would be pretty uncomfortable with that term, largely because I feel like the hobby's so young. I think if I spend maybe 10, 15 more years doing this and I realize there's like nothing too much, there isn't that much more to learn, and I feel like I've been successful for 15 to 20 years, I'd be more comfortable feeling that way about myself. It's saying something like that would feel uncomfortable. Now, I think I referred to myself as an expert once fairly early on in the channel, and I regretted it. And then I may have a couple of times throughout. And I think that at the time I called myself an expert in a video or refer to myself that way because I wanted to differentiate and distinguish myself from what I was seeing.
Yeah. But then
So
evolutions went to 1,000 and waifus went to 500, and I was not an expert anymore. As soon as that happened, I was like, clearly I'm missing something here.
and exactly. And here is, and that, right. People who got that right or saw that sort of thing happening or realized that there were more people who enjoyed that stuff than I thought or realized. So for example, I knew that waifu type things were a thing from Yu-Gi-Oh, like Dark Magician Girl stuff, from Weiss, some other stuff. And I, have had said before all that happened that it's interesting that in Pokemon we don't like trainers more because trainers are big parts of the story and are the actual human beings and are part of the Pokemon world.
They're the
And
story. Yeah.
and these are good looking cards. So it's interesting why these characters. And so one thing I did right is I was buying up some of those like gym leader cards from like the first edition, from like the gym heroes. And
those look great.
Yeah, and I always really liked those, and I always really liked the versus series cards with like the gym leaders on the
Nice.
cards. And so I always appreciated and enjoyed that. What I did not expect was like two, three, $400 lilies coming out of nowhere. Because before then, now and Lily and like that card from like Ultra Prism, it was always higher. I think it was at like $100, while the Rainbow Rare Charizard was at 500. So there were certain cards that were already, and again, this is knowing the price history, knowing these types of things that were high, and so there was already that demand and interest, and so waifus was not like artificially created necessarily by just like one YouTuber or these types of things, but it certainly was pushed and snowballed, and not artificially, but I do think that there was I think what happens is people like things that are expensive often. And so when something becomes expensive, now all of a sudden more people like it who didn't like it before. It's the same thing I think happened with evolutions and other types of things. And so what you happened is you can get a snowball effect. A bunch of people get into something and now they look at it differently, and that can actually hold and become a pattern and a thing. I mean, look at like Charizard. Why is Charizard so much more expensive than every other Pokemon? It is not because people like Charizard better than every other Pokemon. I don't believe that that's true, or that much better.
Either.
Right.
I don't
and
either.
So there are tons of things that happen and just get ingrained in a hobby. I mean, you can even look at sports, right? And if you just look at stats of these players, there's some players who are way cheaper by their stats than other players. But then we talk about like, well, but that player's like good looking or has a smile or is on TV or has been in movies. I mean, there are all sorts of intangibles and reasons why things become valuable that often have to do with marketing and all sorts of stuff. But the people who knew that that was going to happen or saw that was going to happen and correctly predicted that type of thing definitely may have had an expertise that you and I didn't have, or some knowledge that you and I didn't have in that type of the market. I don't know the answer to that. They also might have just been guessing and repeating what they heard, that, and only they know that. I don't know that. But
I mean, a lot of it was, things very quickly were moving out of people's buy range.
Yeah.
And rapidly, a large swath of the Pokemon market just moved out of people's buy range. And then people looked at waifus and said, wow, these are cheap. You can get these graded 10s from 10 to 20 bucks. They're really good looking. Put it in a video and they're worth more than 10 to 20 bucks, sure, but they rocketed. I mean, we're talking $500 for some stuff, and it's like they've come back down, right? Which is why you're looking for the expert, which is, I think, what somebody would, I think you would have said it on here, I'm sure. I would have said it in a video, like, if you're watching a Twice Baked Jake because you're trying to see the next thing that'll pop so that you can get yours before everyone else gets theirs, do a double check on the price and what it's been doing. And if it's selling for 500 and 2 weeks ago it was selling for 20, then just hold off, right? And then that's what an expert would have told you. And then either the price is going to come down naturally, or these things are going to get graded because all this motivation is there to grade, and you'll have another opportunity, but don't FOMO. And for me, I think that's what's important for me as a collector. Like, why I someone can show you a new area of the market that you were unfamiliar with and you could want to go buy it. But then to know how to look and do your own research on the prices currently, and if they make sense, what they have been, what the pops will be, what they could be, then, all those questions I think is important.
I think it's also like, how do you be an expert on demand? I mean, it goes back to like, an expert also knows like how difficult that is to predict, and how hard in any market like this, and that goes to Pokemon in general, like, and why there's always that risk that Pokemon now goes on a downhill trajectory instead of stabilizing and then eventually going back up, is because it's just very, very hard to predict demand. I mean, someone like Twice Baked Jake, like, I mean, I'd feel pretty comfortable. Like, at this point, I would imagine he's like fairly an expert at this hobby. I mean, he's been running this YouTube channel. He's been super engaged in things. I think he's probably been super engaged in prices. Now, does he demonstrate that on his channel to me? No, but I would guess he probably is. Does he demonstrate deep knowledge in, price history or pop reports or the analytics of stuff that I would look for as an expert? No, but that's not what his channel is. He doesn't come on and say, okay, I saw this card sell 3 times, the same card because I'm tracking the numbers of that card, and that tells me this about that card, and that type of knowledge. But he very well might be doing that, and that's just not what he shares or how he creates his videos. Now, do I think he's probably,
he's knowledgeable for sure. I'm not saying he's not an expert.
And I'm sure he's certainly on the Pikachu promos, and has sent a lot of them and bought a lot of them and talked a lot of them and had lots of conversations, I would think. He has a really good understanding of those and popularity around those. But yeah, but I mean, it's public and we talked about, but it bothered me when he said, like, I have no effect on the market, or things I talk about, people don't, but that a lot of people have come out and said things like that. And so this then goes, and that doesn't make you not an expert though. It doesn't make you someone who isn't very knowledgeable,
right. Right. So, no, and I wasn't trying to say he's not an expert.
Sure.
And I'm sure he's not an expert on like all of Pokemon, like what we were talking about.
I would think.
I'm sure he's highly knowledgeable.
He certainly hasn't demonstrated it. Yeah. I mean, he might be, but he hasn't publicly demonstrated it. Yeah. So, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I could tell you guys that, like, for me, there's a lot of people in the hobby that know so much more than me about the releases and about the distributions and the history of the cards, that when I sit in Discords, chats, and different places from like some old E4 guys or other sorts of things, I'm just trying to take in knowledge and listen and understand and grow my knowledge in that. I often don't speak on that stuff because it's secondhand knowledge, and I'm not even 100% sure they're right. So there's always there's always a question of like, who are these people telling me these things? But there's a lot of stuff. I think, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to become an expert and feel confident that the information you have is correct in these types of things. It's definitely, as a few people in the chat have said, it's about like being really passionate and working all the time at it. Yeah.
Nicki Minaj will get more views than a virtuoso. It's all about defining an expert in what exactly.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I'm just about, it always kicks me to the bottom. No, YouTube. Oh God, I've just lost like more than half.
So we had some Pat Flynn in here earlier.
Oh, nice.
That's what's at the top for me now. I don't know if you see the same thing.
No. So I'm getting lots of questions now about Pokemon card market I'm seeing. I think I'm going to avoid those for now.
I was reading this comment. We have little actual numbers and base a lot of knowledge off of stories and cumulative knowledge for Pokemon. And it's like, I don't know. I've been in this Marvel world for a while now, and it is a godsend to have some of the knowledge that we have in Pokemon. Like there's E4, there's Bulbapedia, just all these websites with information on the hobby. It makes it a pretty incredible hobby when you think about it. Even pricing for the last 5-6 years or whatever it is, we have a lot of help in establishing, information on the history of cards or the price history of cards is kind of a big deal. The population history, we have the population as a history. Like you can look at the pop, you can look at the price, you can look at the pop. It's kind of a big deal. Even with cards, they don't have like a very nice 6-year graph for you to look at for a lot of cards. It's the last three months. I'm like, well, this tells me nothing. Like this player could have popped off in the last 3 months, and I want data over the last 6 years. It's kind of nice how much information. Pokemon has some crazy collectors that just go above and beyond for this hobby. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had some negative experiences on E4 with certain people for sure, and in conversations, but like E4 is a treasure for the hobby overall. And even if you happen to have like some bad interactions or people like yelling at you for not knowing something, or just like, some of the gatekeeping stuff that I've experienced there are just sort of like, if you don't agree with my guy, like we hate you, like the demonizing, the crap that goes on there. Some of it is a treasure for this hobby. And I will always feel that way about E4. It was incredibly valuable for me. And I think so many people there have had such great experiences and also have made such great friendships and long-lasting things. And it just puts so much effort into creating it and then you have these people who just who've given away so much of their time and energy and expertise for free on there, that it just requires your effort to go on there, read it, look at it, engage in it. And it is hard. I mean, particularly as a newer person, to make heads and tails of most of that would be hard, because a lot of the discussions, I mean, it's the same with this channel, to make heads or tails of what the hell we're talking about. I had one of my friends like watched one of my videos a while ago, and he was like, you sounded confident. Like I had no idea what you're saying, but
Yeah.
you know, you seem to know what you're saying. I don't know. You said a lot of stuff. I have
You
no
seem
idea.
to sound like an expert,
Yeah, exactly.
right? I mean,
Um, but yeah, but it's a great place. I'm a big fan of it. Um, okay. Yeah, and people are saying here, like you have experts, people who are like experts on the video games, who have played every video game, know the ins and outs of all of them. You people are just like general Pokemon knowledge experts. They could list every Pokemon in order right now, from and again, it's how much do you want to throw around that expert term? What does an expert really mean? Um,
what does the chat think of like who is a Pokemon expert to you guys in the chat, and where do you consider them to be an expert? Have you ever seen those like polls that they do? Like Twice Baked Jake will have a poll. Sometimes they're really interesting.
yeah,
I haven't seen any of his polls in a long time. Is he still doing those?
I don't know.
But I've seen some polls where it's like, oh, I want to know what the majority of people think about that.
Yeah,
Why Pokemon quote unquote experts thought middle era was never going to be valuable. I'm still skeptical on that middle era. I'm not saying it won't be valuable, but like those slabs, I'm still a little bit like, let's flush that pop out. Because that didn't pop off until after PSA had shut down and after they had opened up some of that era. So it's always
I'm
kind
be-
of important.
I'm becoming more of a believer in it as time goes on.
Oh, I
Interesting.
I believe in it. Like I think if you believe in if you believe in jungle or possible, I'll believe in the middle era.
I just wish it
Not that
wasn't
it's
so expensive because I didn't complete like I really like there are some honestly even going into like I really like some of the plasma storm, just the regular EX cards or sorry, the all the plasma sets, like the regular EX cards, the like blue or green pattern with the like insignia in the middle. I think to give him a plug, James from Z&G Emporium is selling, I think, the Lugia tonight, like PSA 10, or may have already gone in his auction block. I really like the look of those cards, and I did not complete them because I thought I'd have time. So there were just lots of things that are now like $2,000 for that, or $3,000 for that, or whatever it costs. Like I don't definitely for me personally, I definitely don't like it that much. like like for me for $3,000, there are other things I would buy, but yeah, I had opportunities to buy those at like $50, $60 in nine that I passed on because I felt like I could wait. And that era has been the strongest performing and also the strongest holding, of any era right now. So, and it really just comes back to that supply. There people are still discovering it, so there's more and more demand, and they're really cool looking cards. And a lot of them are the first ever full art type cards in the hobby, which is huge. And there's really low pops, and the sealed product there isn't that much, and it's very expensive. A lot of those packs are like 150, $200 each. So you can't open. I mean, the financial loss you would take to open more of it to try and get it out. But it's tough because where do those cards fall in the history of Pokemon long term? I don't really know. And
well, if things are out of your price range, you're gonna get pushed there anyway.
yeah, but now these are so expensive. I don't know who's like you could buy these or you could buy first edition PSA 10 Hollow WotC or even some PSA 10 Gold Stars for the prices of these. And that's when
I
you get
just
into like, whew, do you want a Gold Star or a regular full art EX card from Plasma? I
I
go Gold Star PSA 10, but these cards are freaking cool too. I don't know. It's crazy.
yeah, I just I know that their prices popped off this year. They didn't
Yeah.
pop off before PSA was shut down. And so while I get it, while the prices ballooned, it's the same thing on a smaller scale, especially for the tens. but the nines I think will have a decent amount. I just think I don't have any urgency to go for something like that because I think there's still plenty out there to be graded. I think the boxes are a lot cheaper to be cracked. And um, I just I just don't see. I think those I'm a little skeptical on those prices. I don't think the tens are going to balloon, especially learning from like the first edition Watsy era stuff that did not go anywhere after all of that grading. I'm pretty confident in the populations of the middle era stuff, but at the same time, I know that they were not sent in the way base set was sent in, leading up to PSA shutting down. And then when PSA did open back up and these had popped off, the grading costs were so high. Like, I just don't think there's any rush. I think there's still plenty out there. Some comments here. So we got a lot of comments. There's a lot of good experts, people that think are experts. I asked what people who people thought were experts, and we got some SM Pratt, some Gary's, collectibles guru, obviously. Uh, we got some TCA gaming.
The funny thing, collectibles
Jake,
crew very well could be an expert in this hobby.
maybe,
Like
maybe.
that's the thing. It goes back to the points we were making earlier that an expert does not necessarily, they're not necessarily going to share helpful, accurate information.
Yeah. I made a killing off his Bulbasaur prediction though. So got some Leonhardt, some Pokerev, and Twice Baked Jake are entertainment, lower amount of valuable info, but they're experts. I'd call them experts in entertainment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would think someone like Pokerev would probably be. He certainly would be an expert in entertainment, an expert in building YouTube, or he's probably not even he's certainly an expert in the Pokemon hobby. But when you compare him to people like Ludwig or the people or Mizkip or these people, he's probably been learning from them on how to like really build YouTube. And someone with 500 or 600 or 700,000 subscribers is nothing compared to people who have 10, 15 million. And there are levels to expertise, leading up to someone like Mr. Beast in terms of being an expert on how do you do like a viral video or things that people will click on, right? So, but I would assume that he's got a lot of expertise in that area and also a lot of expertise in Pokemon. I would assume certainly a lot of expertise in all of the different sets. I mean, think about the amount of cards that he's opened. Like, he must know the sets and which cards are in which sets so well, you'd think. Also, I would have to think he'd be an expert on price history because he's been buying the whole time. And I would think he would know all of that information. Now, is he a good investor or an expert investor or these types of things? I don't know the answer to that. He doesn't talk about that or share that publicly. So.
Sub F. I like Sub F, dude. Sub F is he's gonna come on here one day. I was talking to him the other day. I was like,
I should have brought him on because talk about a person who is probably fairly expert.
Dude, he is on another level. But I love his level too, by the way. But anyway,
yeah,
get him on. Yeah, I enjoy him.
Should we ask him to come on right now? You want to come on, Nate?
Is he he said he's got paternity. He's doing the whole paternity deal. So
fair enough.
Mizkif and Ludwig, #1 Pokemon card experts. Jake from Pokenomics. Pokemon Catcher was talking about some like hollow earth theory or something. I don't know. This is only possible when the moon is not a solid rock, but a reflection. What if it's a solid rock that reflects? You know what I mean? I'm, I'm no expert.
The secret to being an expert is wearing a suit.
Hey, it's a start. It's a start. Or you could just look like a douchebag too.
Should I or putting really expensive Pokemon stuff around? That's how I'll let the people
Yeah.
know.
Ooh, Bob Saget passed away.
Hmm, that sucks.
That does suck. I think everybody's pretty spot on though. Experts will leave no stone unturned when extensively covering the material. They can provide a detailed explanation of your question and look at different outcomes as well. Yeah, some experts, like Jake's impressed me here and there where it's like, wow, shoot. You were talking with Dan, I think, the other night, talking about a pop, and you're like, I think the pop's probably around like 135. And this was combining PSA 10s and 9s in your head. And it was like 137. And I was just impressed by that. So, yeah.
Like over the last 6 years, price history, population reports, things like that. Like, but that is the market, right? So for market stuff, I feel I know it really well, but that's all through just effort and work, and just being, I probably bid on 2,000 items a month, 2 to 3,000 items a month. So I'm also a super hugely engaged in all the prices and in everything all the time. And so when you do that, you just have that information, and one thing that Warren Buffett would say is it's a lot more about hard work and being interested and being engaged in stuff than actual intelligence or ability. And that's the stuff. And then surrounding just good common sense, general financial principles around that'll like make you successful, and it's part of why I can see a large lot and I can price it really accurately, really quickly. And because I can do that, I buy a lot of lots and I get a lot of really good deals that other people, they probably see it going for low and assume it's not that valuable. So it's like, that's the type of stuff that really, from that market perspective, from the getting good deals, from the building a collection on the cheap. The reason why I have a channel like this one and not a channel talking about the history, which I love, and would like to do and enjoy doing. And we get to talk more about like what we're collecting and what we like at times, just privately, is because what I felt like I had to offer and where I felt like I was an expert in, if I'm an expert in anything, is the stuff I do here, and the stuff that we talk about here. But yeah, but it's, again, like, it's one of those things, as we were saying earlier, like I could quickly lose that ability if I wasn't engaged anymore. It's not something, it would always be useful. But for example, like I was less of a Pokemon expert 6 months ago than I am now because I wasn't buying stuff because everything was so expensive that I just was like moved on. you know,
Same
there was a
here.
time when I was like pretty freaking DBZ score. I could have told you every single thing about that. So it's like I get super into things, and now I'd have a hard time to maybe remembering, or it wouldn't be as easy. So
No, I was the same way. Like prices on anything, I could tell you what the price should be. And yeah, when things exploded, it was like, well, gosh, I'm going to take it by card basis for a while because keeping track of multiple cards isn't doing me any good. The price is changing by the week, but it's starting for me to get back to there where it's like, okay, I'm kind of leveling out here, and I could probably think that this is a good price for it to be for a certain period of time. But I'll be right back.
yeah. Yeah, people are sharing, people who they feel like are experts or experts to them or have expertise. Again, for me, I think more about this as not someone as an expert, but that they have a fair amount of expertise in something, a good way. certainly everyone that I'm hearing you guys talk about here, I think have huge amount of experience and knowledge in the hobby. And I do think that a lot of it too, there are a lot of people and there are a lot of small channels of people who I would say know more about certain parts of the market than anyone you guys listed. You know, like these big names and these big channels and these people who are, you know, considered the experts of the hobby or the sort of the people we go to. There are people who have smaller channels and tons of people, even more to the point, who have no channel, you know, and no social media presence or following, who have a lot of knowledge. And then again, it gets to sort of like expertise, right? Like there are very few people doing what Rusty is doing over at TCA Gaming at sort of his level, at his volume. You know, you have people like Danny Phantom, you have people like Mason, who owns a store, who has a host of things that he's an expert at or has expertise in that I have no expertise in, right? No actual real world experience in. And I might have some generalized knowledge in because I talk with him, or I talk with lots of LGSers, and I can imagine and put myself in his position and the types of things that I would do and what I would do. But I don't have there are going to be a lot of things that he would have or Danny would have expertise on, or SM Pratt or TCA Gaming, or Dan from Catch 'em All Collectible, my Patreon partner, part of why I brought him on, or Old School, or a million Palatown, you know, Pokemon from Instagram. Like a million people have all sorts of different expertise, various business expertises that I may not have. That's why you don't see me talking about and making a lot of videos on a lot of topics that I don't feel like I have some expertise or ability in, you know. I do think the whole like who is the biggest expert thing, and you know, is a flawed way of viewing the Pokemon landscape, and it unfortunately can be a sort of like a competitive sort of negative way of viewing it, rather than who are people who we feel have legitimate expertise and things to offer in a variety of areas. And who are people who are really up and coming and who are really engaged in, you know, I think someone like Flex Gods that Swami, you know, mentioned earlier, like he's really, really engaged and is constantly learning and is having a lot of success because he's gaining expertise and knowledge, like real expertise and knowledge. And one thing that can happen, you'll find as you gain more and more expertise and knowledge, is that you don't feel necessarily like an expert in anything, but you actually are, you know. And there are probably a number of people who watch this channel who have lots and lots of expertise, you know, in investing in cards, or in throwing the investing word, but, you know, speculating cards and or running a business and or collecting, which is the heart of this channel, is about collecting and how to collect in a financially smart and viable sort of way and long-term way. So for those who are just joining us, thank you for coming in. Swami is on the stream too, but he'll be right back. Let's see. Yeah, Rusty being, yeah. And then you're going to have like people you talked about, like for me, Zach, who, you know, will be back on the channel soon. And is someone who I've really looked up to as such a collector, and someone who I just really admired his video style and the way he built his videos and his channel out before and showed his cards. And it got me into collecting Pokemon and really grading Pokemon cards. Like someone like him, the amount of expertise you get from completing every set, you know, or trying to get everything in PSA 10, the amount of grading experience someone like he has, the amount of, you know, error experience and individual set difference experience someone like that has, the OC stuff that he collects, right? Now, does that mean that he knows like every price of everything all the time, or he's a market or speculator expert? I don't know the answer to that. He doesn't demonstrate that publicly, but he very well might be. You know, oftentimes when someone's does have a certain expertise like that, they probably have other expertises that may not be the central one that they share with other people. But and then I do think that you have a lot of generalists. Okay. And when I talk about a generalist, generalists are not people that we should be like angry at for sharing their opinions and talking about things and sharing their experiences, you know. And I do think that there is some of it is the fault of some of the content creators or some of the things that happened, but some of it is also people are overly angry at people who don't know a lot having a platform. And and it's okay for people who don't know that much or as much as some other people having a bigger platform than the people who do know a lot more for a variety of reasons. I think where people have an understandably negative reaction is when that person is portraying themselves as having deep knowledge in an area when really they have very like general knowledge. And that can be tested if you ask them some specific questions about something and they just have no idea or no answer, right? And they kind of can talk about the surface of something, but can't go deep into the actual numbers or the data behind it. You know, and there certainly was a lot of that this year.
How you doing on the comments?
I don't know, somewhere in there. I'm mostly just not reading them out loud, mostly just taking them in. I think they're really good. We can move to like some market stuff too now. And you know, feel free to continue making comments about experts or because I think it's an interesting and good topic. And part of how we started the video today was talking a little bit about why, you know, and this idea of experts and this, you know, Logan Paul situation and trusting experts, finding experts, people not overstating their expertise, all these types of concepts. So Flippin' Andy says, he wants to say that he truly believes that prices will keep gradually coming down over the next few years. A lot of people during the pandemic were laid off, unemployed, and low wage workers, who were getting $350 a week, were getting $1,000 a week from unemployment. Yeah. So one thing that I talked a lot about was those points during the height of everything this year that, you know, when I would have discussions with people, you know, about is the market going to double or is the market going to have, or like what's going to happen? There was a lot of like pandemic stuff, including all the things you just listed that were temporarily increasing the prices. And so in order for prices to keep going up, not only was it going to have to deal with all the supply coming back from PSA and CGC, not only was it going to have to deal with all of this, you know, people losing their unemployment, you know, the extra money from the unemployment, people spending their money on other things outside of, people going out, spending their money on hobbies, going on vacation, doing these other sorts of activities. So it was going to have to contend with all of that. And somehow the demand would have needed to continue to increase enough, and the awareness would have needed to continue to increase enough where prices would have still pushed up through that. And so that seemed unlikely. And most of the objective sort of data and thought were pointing to that it was going to go down, right? And that things were already overinflated at the time, and that there was sort of an irrational exuberance certainly built into the price points about that Pokemon could only move in one direction, right? So now, though, I think we're in a very different time. And I think that there's a lot more. I think we're already back to normal a lot more. I think a lot of prices have already hit their sort of normal Pokemon time floors. And those are the things that I'm going after. And then some of the vintage stuff, I'm always looking for, you know, good deals for cards that I'm looking to get in my collection. I could see the Pokemon card company. I could see Pokemon cards, certain items, certainly it's a humongous hobby. So of course, and it's a bit of an obvious, not very helpful answer, but of course, some things will continue to go down. There's millions and millions of cards. Even if the vast majority, 95% of the hobby doubles, there's still going to be things that that don't go up or go down temporarily. But I think the majority of the hobby, I don't think is going to go too much further down from here. But there's when you have items that are 10, 12, $15,000, when there are 200 of that item or 300 of that item, or booster boxes where there are tens of thousands, those could all collapse. I mean, you have to understand that it's always a possibility that those could all collapse. Like now, that, but where was that thinking when everything was 3 or 4 times as much? And that's where I get into, I think people really like these things and want to collect them and be here. And so I don't think 200, 300, or even 10,000 of these items is a lot when we think about over the long period of how many people can really afford an item like that, would really cherish and enjoy these items. So,
some thoughts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see it. Like you, I feel a lot better about a much larger portion of Pokemon than I had. And I could see it where, like, you saw 2016, and then you saw kind of like a gradual flat, maybe a little dip down till about Hidden Fates, really, 2019. And that's just for graded slabbed cards. But I could see, money. I don't think interest as much. I think where we're at right now with interest is probably a pretty good, projection of where interest is going to be in a year, in 2 years, as opposed to all the interest that was in, because you could literally buy something and flip it for 4x however many weeks later.
Yeah.
So I feel really good about the interest. The prices themselves, I feel a lot more confident on. I feel a lot more confident on prices holding for large portions. Obviously, some things can come down. We've seen it with, like I have Ophidia. I think there's, let's say, 200 of those off the top of my head. It went from 15 grand to 4 grand. And I think it would come down even further. But with Pokemon, the amount of dollars might continue to lessen and spent, but that doesn't mean prices. If there are 4 first edition Arcanines up for sale, and a price is X, that doesn't mean that the price comes down just because those sell every 2 months instead of every 2 weeks, right? It's, I could see, like Rainy Day wants to go to Japan and do a trip to Japan, but it's closed down and he doesn't see it opening up for a while. Yeah, there's just going to be other things to spend your money on. That doesn't mean you're less interested in Pokemon. But I do get what he's saying, where there might not be as much money spent in the hobby. Either that, or we are at a spot where it's going to stay around here for a while. But that also doesn't mean prices crash. If the fundamentals are good, they won't crash. If there's 10 evolutions PSA 9s being put up on eBay every day, then that price is going to collapse with less dollars being spent in the hobby. But if there's 4 first edition Arcanines and that's it, that doesn't mean that price collapses, which is kind of like goes back to price stickiness. And I think price stickiness is going to be heavily affected by supply. So,
yeah, I mean, we're definitely in a period where there's still a lot, I would say. So I very much agree with what you're saying. I do think that there are still a lot of people who are burned out, who are still here right now. and they're burned out either financially or interest or whatever, and they're still here, maybe trying to make it work, trying to buy, flip some things, trying to, but I think the majority of that is left, but maybe realistically, I don't think all of that, and so there might be a sort of slowly that those people leaving, that sort of thing leaving. I think you're still having tons of people have tons of submissions to get back that they're going to sell, that they're just going to liquidate and flood certain areas of the market with. I will be buying up those if I can, and they're at the price points that I have been buying things at. And the way that I buy, I have a very set value for everything that I'm looking at. Pretty much, I tend to buy. There are probably 1,000 different cards that I'd be interested in buying right now, or roughly, from pretty much every era, many cards from every era of Pokemon. And I'm looking for certain prices, and I will buy all of them up that come up within that price point, basically.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just, I value them. I like them. I enjoy them. I'm happy to be here. I really think that people should buy and collect and own these things if it makes them happy, and it's something that it feels cool. It feels enjoyable to own. I think if you don't want to do that, or you don't like the more chasey stuff, I think that's, first of all, like, don't be persuaded by the chasey money stuff too much. I think absolutely there's money to be made. And if you're savvy, and I think that there's some cards that are going to go up in 20 to 40 years from now, I think will be 100 or 1,000 times potentially more expensive than they are right now. I'll be completely honest with you. Like, I do think that that's possible, but I think that for almost every single person, what I would be doing is collect binders if you prefer that. Just complete modern sets if you like doing that. If you like the waifus, just collect the waifus. If you like the Pikachu promos, just collect those. Like, who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do whatever you like.
I've seen some people have a blast. Like, Slow King. Like, there's a Slow King collector.
Exactly.
It's hilarious. Like, he gobbles up all the Slow Kings, and it's like, wow, like, that is an amazing artwork of Slow King. Yeah.
Have fun with it. It is not a sprint, right? You're allowed to be in this hobby as long as you want. And if the hobby implodes, phenomenal. You'll be able to buy even more things because you like these things and they bring you happiness. And it's not about, and this is where you get into the danger of the psychology. You like something only because it's expensive. Do not, like, the danger of owning an item because it's expensive only. And if you look at your items and you say, the only reason I actually like this item is because it's expensive. If this item was $20, I wouldn't give a crap about it. And if you can look through your $10,000 card, collection, $100,000 card collection, and say, you know what? The only reason I like this, or the majority of the reason I like this, because it's very expensive. Now, to be fair, I shouldn't hate, like, I think that's okay too, to some extent, and reasonable to some extent. It's fun owning something expensive because it's expensive and because it's a status symbol and because you enjoy that. But the reason that is so dangerous, particularly if you're just doing that alone, is because if there is no fundamentals beyond the price and beyond the fact that it's expensive and not the fact that people actually have a positive emotional response to it, or like the story, or like the rarity, or like the chase, or whatever it is, it's very overpriced probably. And that card may be in for some significant drops. Or a booster box. Anything good there?
Yeah, we got Poke Knowledge and we got Gem Mint.
Nice.
Dropping in.
Hey, man.
They asked us what we're experts on. I told them we said we weren't experts.
Yeah, I think where would you say, Swami, where do you feel like your expertise would be in this hobby? Like if you were to say, I feel like I have some decent expertise, my deepest sort of knowledge would be in this. Where would you place it within the Pokemon hobby, or because it might be Marvel at this point? I don't know. Like where would
I
you?
was just about to say, like, it's all about Marvel now, right?
Yeah.
Like I've spent so much time learning about Marvel, and the thing is, maybe that's why I'm enjoying it so much, but I'm not
Yeah.
an expert over there. I could probably sound like an expert to some people, to a lot of people that are brand new to it, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I'm kind of like on my way towards working on the Marvel side. I
Yeah.
used to be an expert in set cards, you know, prices, hit pull rates, what are the pops right now? What are these going for right now? What's the box price? You know, what all that stuff. Oh man. And now it's funny, you do forget things. Um, and like it wouldn't take me long to be like, I just go to this website or I just search this specific thing. I could find an answer to a question like that, but yeah, I've been dedicating so much time to like Marvel and a little bit in Flesh and Blood, dabble in there, but yeah, you gotta, like you said, you gotta stay engaged.
Yeah. And one interesting thing you bring up there is like, how much does expertise matter in a world where you can look everything up?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it goes back to speed, right? Like, and I gave an example earlier on in the stream about like doing my own taxes. Most of my life I've done my own taxes, but I was much slower and I was much more anxious and worried I was doing something wrong than when I saw an expert, a tax professional to do them.
Yeah.
It's one of these things of, a lot of the consults I do are actually with like really knowledgeable people in the hobby, but they're making very large purchases and they want to get a second opinion or a second sort of expertise or a second set of eyes on it. They want to know if I have any specific information that they're missing or anything like that. Talking to a human being can definitely have value, and hearing a human being talk, on watching someone's YouTube video, these types of things versus like looking something up, because sometimes there's a story around the data, or there's a way to kind of read or interpret the data.
Interpreting. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be more helpful. But I do think it's part of why being a generalist is far more accessible now than it used to be. Like being able to be like you can be a doctor, a lawyer, a generalist in so many things. I'm just like going online for like 4 hours and trying to like deep dive into any subject. You know what I mean? But and I do think, although there are diminishing returns, so for example, I learned more in the first 2 years of this hobby than I've learned in the last four, probably by a pretty large margin.
Mhm.
There's a sort of diminishing return. I do think that there's a lot of value as you move, and some of the things that you pick up and learn later on, and some of the mistakes that you see that you made earlier, like they become, and you also become more confident, you become more efficient, you become quicker, like all of those things. So one thing I wanted to ask the chat, because we have people like Gem Mint and other people, if they're still here, and for everyone, like what areas do you guys feel like you're an expert in this hobby? Where is your expertise? Because I'm sure almost everyone here, and I'm not saying that any of us here are experts necessarily, but that when we talk about like some expertise or where you feel like you're most knowledgeable, and I'm interested to hear what people have to say, on that.
That's a great question.
Yeah, and I think that one thing I love about the Discord these days is like the coin guys, love
Oh,
I
that was
love
fascinating.
those discussions, right?
I have that, by the way, if you need that.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
like 5 hours recorded if those guys want to post it
you
in
know,
there.
yeah. If they ever start a channel, I'm happy to,
That was
plug.
super interesting.
Yeah, all the Marvel discussion, the DBZ discussions, I
Oh
like
yeah.
I like, we have the non-collectibles area that gets like much more stuff posted to often than the Pokemon.
That's my jam over there.
Like, I go on there and I just see things I've never seen all the time, and I'm like, oh
Love
crap!
it.
Now I
Yeah, I
gotta.
know. There's been some Cardass on there. There's the Star Wars. I really like what some of the people are collecting with Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good time.
So, my goal, right? Like, I want to feel like I have expertise in non-sports TCGs when all is said and done. That's like a goal for me. And so, and I want to like open this potential like museum store, sort of like Mile High Comics. Like, I want to do that, and as I've told you, for cards, like that guy, and listening to that guy just like talk about comics and
Oh,
be in the store and show it. It's like I'm not like the
incredible.
longest comic fan. I like comics and I like the characters, but like it's heaven. Like, I would love to just go hang out in that store. But imagine that, but cards.
Yeah, that'd be
How,
amazing. I'd love it.
how like you just go there and you'd walk around and you'd see things you've never seen before. It would be heaven. And yeah, and so because of that, I want to be able to know part of what drives me, right, to learn more and more about all these things. And part of why I like this Discord I'm being in, and other Discords I'm in where I'm constantly learning, is there is that continual process, and there's so much knowledge, and some things come easier to me than other things. Like, for me, sometimes I get bored with like really nichey error stuff. Like, my immediate reaction is, who cares? Like, I don't care. But then I have another part of me that says, okay, but you want to understand things, and you want to understand all the things so that you can explain it to people and or notice it or acknowledge it. So you have to, do it. Whereas, like, oh, please.
Oh no, I mean, I just have a comment I thought was
Go
good.
for it.
So the hyper rare, he says it matters because there's a lot of information in the world where everything is online. So the expertise would be differentiating between fact and fiction and being able to make sound decisions. Yeah, I mean, you could turn on Fox and they could tell you one story, and then you could turn on MSNBC and they could be talking about the same topic or something that happened that day, completely different story, right?
Yes.
So that matters. That it really does matter.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's an expert money waster. I like that.
Expert what?
Experts at blowing money. They just blow money on Pokemon cards.
Yeah, I'm an expert at that too. I've reached expert status myself. I think both Swami and I have reached experts on trying to just collect so much nonsense, filling up too much space, like causing tensions in our romantic relationships with cards.
It's terrible. Terrible. Selling overpriced hot dogs. I like it, Mason. It's probably the best expertise you could have.
Yeah. I love Mason's, like, I was watching his now I'm forgetting the names, but his like new series, what's it called? Cardboard.
It's a series that will last you for many years from now. You'll be able to go back to and watch, right, Mason?
I forget, but I like the intro is hilarious. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, where he's just sitting there like.
I forget the saying, right? The thing he says, it's like, I'm your like host or something, or I'm your friend in the industry.
We need to start memorizing this because it is. I'm gonna have it memorized in however many years, but I love it. There's this one where he looks serious at you, and another one where he's. Yeah, I mean, Mason, did you know that was gonna catch fire when you were filming that, or what?
It lit a fire in the Pokemon community.
Card shop candids. Yeah, that's it.
Oh yeah. Pre-release staff and pre-release Pokemon cards, an expert in that. Swami's an expert in gut feelings, he says.
I'll take it. I like it. Dan's got us. He's got us
Now,
caught up.
Aiden says something interesting. Do you feel too much information can drain your enjoyment of a hobby? No, for not for me, but actively trying to like get information all the time is tiring. And so I like to just like, relax and not talk about things so intense. Like, so when I go into other people's streams, once in a while, people like ask me questions in the streams about like the market and these types of things. And I like to just go in there and just like basically like just like Mason does, just like taunt and ridicule me. I like to go into my friends' chats and like just troll them and mess on them and stuff and relax. So there's all sorts of ways that I enjoy the hobby that is not like information gathering. I'm not trying to grow in any way. I'm just hanging out or I'm looking at cool cards,
Yeah.
is what I would say. But I don't think like, well, I don't know what you'd say, but I don't think like getting new information has made me enjoy the hobby less. Like learning something new ever made me enjoy the hobby less.
No, learning new things is the best part.
Yeah.
It's just I do get it. Like when you're trying to learn to make a decision, that can you don't always want to be doing that. I get that where sometimes
Yeah.
you want to just chill, have a good time, but um yeah, no, I totally agree. Most of the time I enjoy learning. But like this red dot stuff, I never got too interested in that. We're talking about like the red dot error, and
Yeah. Stuff like that.
there's definitely things that are interesting to people and not interesting to others, but I think overall it's usually kind of some things you just get hooked on though. Like I could see why people get hooked on that. I
Yeah.
would I would learn about it and be like, oh, that's cool, kind of move on.
So Jamie Scott says, do you guys find it hard to switch off from Pokemon? How about you, Swami?
No, I got Marvel. I got Marvel.
I'm cards all the time, but
Oh,
like
oh.
I'm at work and I just have in my pocket, I have my Marvel cards and I'm just kind of like looking at them throughout the day.
Yeah.
I think for me, there are times like when because of the Patreon is work. Okay. So like building those presentations, doing those things takes effort and work. And I don't always feel like sitting there for 12 hours writing up a spreadsheet, but I feel, first of all, I'm being paid for it. And I also feel like I have a responsibility to offer people, some data, something useful. On my own time, I don't feel like I ever like am thinking about Pokemon too much or because I will say though that like I'm really looking forward to like getting my basketball back. I'm going to be playing like 2-3 nights a week. Like there are other things when I make this move, I'm moving back to like where I used to live and I have like a pickup game. Like there are other things that I'm definitely looking forward to doing more. Hopefully if, the world stops being sick. But outside of that, like, but I will say that like, even doing when I'm doing some of that Pokemon work that I don't want to be doing, or like I feel like I have to make a video and I'm not in the mood to make a video, that I really only make videos now when I feel like it or it's a topic I want to talk about, but a little bit of that. And so, I mean, you could probably definitely talk to that, but it can be a little bit like work or effort. It's the old saying that like anything you do for a job, there are going to be elements that there are deadlines or things that you need to get done or the things that you need to do that you don't necessarily want to do, even if a lot of it is stuff you do enjoy and happen to be wanting to do. I think if this is a hobby though, for you purely, ideally, it wouldn't feel like, like work in the sense of like, okay, I have to do this, I have to do this. Now I don't want to do it, but I have to do it anyway. But even hobbies, I mean, you can grow and kind of build yourself in your hobbies and be dedicated to your hobbies in a way. I certainly have that are not necessarily always like immediately like fun, but are more for like delayed gratification somewhere in the future. So what do you think, Swami?
Yeah, I mean, it got to be a lot when it wasn't tough to make videos when I wasn't spending an hour and 45 minutes driving to work every day. Uh, and when uh, the world was literally shut down, I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. And that wasn't hard at all to make videos, but like it definitely took on to where like I was thinking about making a video at work where I needed to be thinking about work type deal. So yeah, it had gotten to the point where um, I was thinking about Pokemon too much and I needed to step away. But it's been it's been great because now I do think of it like when I want to, right? And when I'm my interest is peaked and yeah, I gobble it all up all over again. So yeah, I'm like right back into that, collecting mode and everything.
Here's an interesting question. What would be better for a new business starter, to become an expert on sealed product or single and graded cards? What do you
I
think?
would become an expert on whatever you're selling. I mean, like I would become an expert on how to make money. Um, because that's I'm serious. I'm serious. Because uh there's a lot there's a lot to it.
Make money. Become an expert on making money. That's how you
Yeah,
make money.
seriously.
I mean, so I would say for me, like if I were starting an online business right now, the hard part about the graded market is the grading companies right now. If the grading companies get back to $10 to $20 a card, like PSA particularly, and the wait and the turnaround times are not that bad, I think that and the market were to be similar to what it is now, where there's still an interest and a hunger in graded cards, I would say that singles and the graded market is much better place to be as an online kind of, reseller flipper, than I would with booster boxes, particularly if you don't have a distributor, a large, and the main thing is that you're not starting out. You're not going to, if you can get in with a distributor, you're not going to be getting enough modern sealed boxes that you're going to be able to run a full business on that. So the majority of your business is going to be going on to eBay and PWCC and Facebook groups and Heritage and Golden, and you're going to be trying to buy large lots of stuff that you can literally you're trying to buy it under market and then sell it at market or slightly above market, and you're just trying to flip it. And that's very different than like an LGS or even an online store that is a large connected with a large distributor where you're getting tons and tons of sealed product. I definitely, although I will say someone like Z&G Emporium had a lot of success flipping vintage sealed, which is something that I would personally would never do because I would worry about fakes too much. I'd be too afraid. I would be worried about, I don't like the idea of like opening up and then selling all of the packs separately to people. I also don't love the business, like and I don't want to be a pack breaker and open packs, which is where a lot of like the additional money is, in all of that. But yeah, for me, definitely definitely singles and graded cards would be the way to go once the grading card companies get better. If I were to be doing it right today, I would still have the same answer, but you have to have a lot more capital and a lot more patience.
Yeah.
So like I'm building a humongous backlog of singles that I may send in one day. And I may never, and I like PSA may never lower their prices, and I may get stuck with these for a really long time, or I'm just gonna have to resell them as singles for slightly higher than I'm buying them. Or just literally just say it's not worth it and I'm just going to take the loss right now. And eventually I'll make it back by selling them somewhere down the line, but I would not, if this was my business, I would not be doing that as my primary income. I have a number of first of all, I really have 3 jobs right now. So I have a lot of things that are not, so yeah,
I would agree.
That's what I would say.
That's what I've done the whole time
Yeah.
is Um, I started in 2014 and I was buying collections off of Craigslist. And over the years, I made some really good connections. A couple of guys drive around and they buy storage units. And whenever they got Pokemon cards, they'd call me. And yeah, I did really well. I think I didn't really do a lot until 2017. I made about 8,000 and I had all these cool cards that I had put in my own personal collection
Yeah.
on top of all that. So yeah, it really kicked off for me in 2017, but that's all I've ever done is just buy. Well, it's not true. All I've ever made money on was slabs. I made a ton of money on modern sealed product in 2020, but I hadn't made any money on it going into 2020. So I had bought product that, I would buy some sets I went heavy in. Other sets I bought at least two booster boxes. One I opened, one I kept sealed. All of those didn't go anywhere until 2020, and then I sold in, made some massive profits. Current modern products, you need to be set up with a distributor. You need to have distributor pricing. I would not be buying to flip right now. And there's products today, modern products today that are still in rotation that might get reprinted, but they might, if they don't get reprinted, they might, scoop back up in price because the supply gets eaten up. But I think as we move ahead in these future sets, they're going to be printing more and more, and that possibility, it's not even a guarantee, but that possibility goes away as we go into future sets. But that's a big thing. If you are going to try and make money with graded, a lot of my stuff I'm buying raw to grade later when grading prices are down, because baking in $100 or $25 into a card as cost for a grade, you really better be doing it on the right cards, or you might not make your money on top of the cost to buy it raw. But that's historically for me, that's where I've made all my money, was just buying collections and flipping graded cards in high grade. So, or just flipping a raw collection that wouldn't grade out high.
Yeah. I think part of what's hard is part of this question is like as a new person. And it's sort of like, well, the reason I can do what I can do is expertise, not as being an expert, but like a lot of like, to go back to what we're talking about is like grading tens of thousands of cards, myself looking at thousands of 1,000 collections, whatever it is, having lots and lots of experience of figuring out sort of how prices move, which ones tend to do the best, what prices should I be buying things at, how does this stuff work, how does this stuff move, how did it move 6 years ago, how did it move 5, 4, 3, 2, how's it moving right now, trying to understand all of that. I will say that if Pokemon stabilizes and or goes back up and doesn't go down, if you know what you're doing, it is, if you are losing money doing this, like, I don't know what you're doing, because I'll just be completely honest with you. It is very, very easy to make money flipping items when you have the knowledge. Now, what I will say, your biggest danger is time loss, and that you're not making very much money for your time. So, you could end up working lots and lots of hours, and it could take you many years to sell things, and things could really slow down, and you could have a ton of inventory that has decent value but just isn't liquid enough, and so you can't get rid of it. There's all sorts of things that could happen that would force you to liquidate and sell, at a loss, or a little bit under market or whatever. But generally speaking, that's going to be true. It's just very easy. The margins are huge. So, but it's not something that I would ever do ever personally as a full-time job. To me, it would be something, if you had like a couple $100,000 and you were willing to work really, really hard, you could probably make it a full-time job. And when I say a full-time job, I mean like 70 to 120 grand a year, like fairly consistently. But if you don't have that and you don't have the expertise, and you're not willing to work really hard, I would never jump into this as a full-time job. And I wouldn't jump into it as a full-time job anyway. This is something that I think best advice is you have a career and another job going on. You start to build this up, and then you maybe quit your job and move to this once it's really a sustainable thing. But even for people who did that, like Dan and Old School and Z, like I like that doing that. I don't think I'm ever capable of doing that. I would never do it because I don't trust the market and I don't trust being able to flip things and doing that as something that can last forever and pay a good enough amount. Now, part of it for them is I think their cost of living, keeping their cost of living low, having incomes from spouses and or starting other businesses in the area, plus making a lot of money and having a bit of a nest egg. And it's something that they're probably trying, and then they might go back. The old car shop, I live life on the edge. Yeah. There, people doing it full time is not something that I would recommend for anyone to just jump into if you have not been doing it for a long time and you don't have anything else. Now, if you're not working and you're unemployed and you're trying to get a job, then of course it would make sense for you to, to try that. I mean, try it, I guess. But it's not something that, I would probably start with driving cars for Uber and we're, getting some other jobs and hustling.
Yeah. I was assuming part-time, like side gig, side hustle type stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I was assuming as I was answering that.
Okay. How you doing for time, Swam?
I got about 12 minutes. I was trying to bounce around 7 my time. That's
That
cool.
feels good too. Let's do that. So we'll take a few more questions and then end it around there. And then an hour later, we'll actually end it. No, we're actually going to cut it off. Pull out anything you'd like, Swam.
Oh, there was just some good conversation.
Yeah, we got Cardboard Empires in here, who I know also runs a card store.
Yep.
So
I like his stuff. All the card shops are out east.
I mean, it's like I was able to buy quite a bit of Battle Styles and Chilling Reign at $72 a box, which is less than all these distributors are paying. So it's a rough, like there are going to be those rough sets and rough times. But if Pokemon really stabilizes and goes back to that 90 to 110, and even on eBay, you're seeing now part of it is because there's all this talk, right? That distributors are selling directly on eBay and undercutting the LGSs that they're selling to, all these types of things. But we have seen an uptick in the booster boxes slightly, and hopefully they, really healthy range is that 90 to 110 where you really have distributors making money, you have LGS stores making money, and you have people able to get the product at what is, I think, reasonable, And as long as Pokemon then does a really good job of not printing too much and of keeping decent value in the singles, then even people opening the packs can get $40, $50 out of it, in value that they'd have. And I think when they get even $60 would be even better, or 70 even, for some sets. If you get $70 of value in cards that it would cost you $70 to buy that, your LGS store makes after all the fees like 80, 82, somewhere in there, that's good. That feels good to me.
It's always felt
they're not making
crazy.
$80. They're getting 82. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always felt crazy to me. Like 82.
Yeah.
That's $12. You're talking about $12 before, fees, shipping, taxes. If you're doing all this within your own store, taxes. And it's like, wow, you got to do that a lot, especially, you got to pay the lease. And Pokemon, it is kind of crazy how they just, you could do this out of your apartment, you know. Um, but yeah, it really, you got to number crunch and really know what you're doing, what you got to sell things for. If you're going to crack a case, like if you're going to get 10 cases and you're going to crack four of them to sell the singles, then you better price those singles right and not just screw around and not mess with the bulk. And, you know, because we're getting into that time where it's like, yeah, this isn't just buy something and flip. Like you are going to make double your money before taxes, fees, shipping, blah, blah, blah. It's, you know, you have to make sure you're making money. That's what I would say.
There's all sorts of factors involved. And that's part of why expertise, so people like Mason, people like Cardboard Empires, people who are actively been running these stores and have been figuring out, okay, how much money do you really make? What products actually sell? What products sell in good times? What sell in bad times? How do we manage our inventory? Where do we put it in the store? How much do we sell online versus in person? What does that look like? How many employees when do we hire an employee? When do we open up a bigger store? There's a million things and both of them are not like, they have not owned, these are not 70-year-old guys who've owned 15 successful humongous stores, right? I mean, they're right. So there's a lot of stuff that they are both going to learn, throughout the years and become more and more experts sort of in what they do, and it's part of why they're active, everywhere, and we see them active in so many places because they're on that, just like, Swami and I, and what we do as fundamentally really collectors, but people who want to collect, we have ambitious goals as collectors and also have part-time, selling to fund our hobby, interests. I don't know how you describe us, Swami, but probably we're similar, you and I.
Good for me. Yeah, works for me.
Yeah. We continue to want to be better at what we do. So, I'm
gonna bounce, but I am gonna plug your Patreon. I enjoy your Discord a lot, and anybody wants to come hang out, it's a good time over there.
Yeah, I really appreciate. I really appreciate just people having smart, awesome discussions, and a big thank you to everyone in the Patreon and the way you guys talk to each other and treat each other. That is something that it's been, I had a fear. I was hoping that this type of channel, and then also like the pay type stuff would weed out people who
zero toxicity.
I know
it's like you can have a lot of laughs.
Yeah, I haven't seen none yet.
There's no toxicity. There's a lot of memes, right? Yeah. Like we can make jokes about this Logan case, all weekend. But there's no toxicity, and it's just a blast. I have a lot of fun in there. So
yeah, so we go in there. We're hoping we have to figure out with the PWCC. I mean, hopefully we do sort of weekly, hangouts, or we'll figure out how to structure things more often. But I just jumped in there, I think 2 nights ago or last night, and had like a 4-hour philosophical conversation with like 2 other people, and it was
yeah. That's awesome. I think I saw who you were talking to.
I was like doing my work for my next day and having this like great philosophical conversation, and they were too, working on,
so good conversations at night. And then anybody looking for knowledge too, like there's already videos with fantastic information and spreadsheets that you'll get access to. So if you're not in, try it for a month, and then you'll get hooked with all of us. I'll hook you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And, the bigger we get, the more things that we can hopefully do as well. So like I have some ideas and plans and things, but it's a matter of like, creating something that's sustainable and that, people are actually enjoying, and where it feels, just something that's a worthwhile addition to their sort of like Pokemon, and collecting journey and experience. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely all of this is going back, all, the money I'm making from that is all going back into cards and hopefully building this freaking museum one day. So anyone who like is involved in this in any way, is helping me hopefully build that. And I have to figure out where in the country to do that and build that and how long.
Do it
that
in
might
Denver, man. All the best stuff's in Denver.
We need some stuff. I am so irritated that Collecticon is not coming anywhere near me again to the East Coast. And Gary told me that they were coming, so he lied to me. No.
Well, he maybe in 2023, Jake.
Hey.
It's not that far away. I mean, you'll probably be able to grade at PSA for $20 a card before they get a Collecticon out there.
I'm gonna have to come. I'm thinking about which one to go to. I'm gonna
Denver.
Come to maybe two.
Denver. Everybody come to Denver. It's gonna be a blast. I'll show you a good time. I got cots. I got beds. Chevels. He knows my chateau. This is my chateau, and anyone's welcome.
When is the Denver one?
October.
Okay.
October 22.
Oh, that's a long from now. Okay, so that's far.
Yeah,
okay,
you got plenty of time.
Plenty of time. I'm thinking of maybe trying to go. The Charlotte one is the closest one to me, and I'm thinking of maybe going to that one. But
North Carolina. I mean, Denver's also a really good time. All right, guys. I'll catch y'all later. See you in Denver in October.
Thank you. Take care, man. All right. Well, I am going to head out as well. Appreciate all the engagement and hanging out tonight. Any news drop on the Logan Paul case? Anyone? People are saying come to Orlando. Maybe that's definitely one of the ones so that's the one that's like this or next month, right? Like the end of February. Yeah. My girlfriend and I were talking about maybe going down to that one. Maybe we're moving next month, so it might be a little tough, but it would be nice to be in Florida for the nice weather. So I don't think that we have any info on that yet. So we'll wait for the info on the Logan Paul situation. I definitely interested to see how that all works out. Otherwise, yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. If you can support the Patreon, if you can click on the eBay affiliate link down below, if you're buying something on eBay, or just liking this video, subscribing to the channel, it's all very much appreciated. And I will continue doing it for everyone. All right. Okay. Everyone have a good night. Bye-bye.